Welcome to this brief overview on Daroma, a practical course of action. That is Graphic Kabbalah in action, so that you may attain that which you want to achieve in life, to achieve your goals, to be able to overcome all the difficulties of our present age, in our present moment, that is, in the very now. And you want quick action. You want to be able to do something immediately and not to delay until tomorrow. Start today. And you can do so. And what is the very first action that you should do? Sit still. Relax. Concentrate. Listen to what we have to say. And then, once you have heard, weigh everything up. Decide, is this for me or not? And if it is for you, immediately there is a go. Ready, steady, go. And you're off onto an amazing experience for the totality of life. It is possible that at the very beginning, even before the beginning, you have reservations. There are things that are worrying you, that you cannot be still and relax and listen. What could this be? Well, the subject matter. Daroma is based, it's a course, a practical course based on Graphic Kabbalah. And Kabbalah is mysticism. And mysticism is sacred geometry. And sacred pertains and relates to religion. And this is where we have reservations. Because the moment we hear about religion, we hear about religious commitment. We don't want to be committed or necessarily committed. Maybe if it is worthwhile, we will be. But that is our reservation. So how can we be relaxed and listen if we have this reservation at the very beginning? Well, here again, the answer is simple. Because our subject matter is Graphic Kabbalah. That is Graphic Kabbalah in the terms of our analysis of Kabbalah as such. And that is, Kabbalah is not something that we have to believe in, but something which is true, scientifically true, proven to be true. And so therefore, if you are dealing with Graphic Kabbalah, everything has a scientific basis. Everything can be proven to be true. You don't have to have reservations. And what is Kabbalah in itself? The word Kabbalah is reception, to be receptive, lekabel, to receive. That is where Kabbalah starts, being receptive. Once you are receptive, you can go ahead. There are no reservations whatever. This raises a question. Because generally in the world today, people have reservations about anything pertaining to religion. Oh, there's a reaction backward. No, it's not for me. And the first thing that we need to resolve is, why this anathema about so-called religion? The story about secularism goes back some 350 years. That's all. What happened 350 years ago? Well, Isaac Newton, the great British scientist who himself was religious, by the way, published his Principii, his principles about the world, which started because of a falling apple. We are told that he was sitting in his orchard and he saw an apple falling. And he asked the question, why is the apple falling? Why is it going down? Why shouldn't it go up? Why shouldn't it go into the sky? And every apple falls. And that led to his laws of gravity, laws of motion, laws of cause and effect. And he came up with these principles, the laws of motion, the laws of gravity. And that is, there is a gravity pull and pulls everything to the earth. And there is the law of cause and effect. And every effect has a cause. And that effect is a cause, which is another cause. And so you have a totality of cause and effect. And this goes back right to the beginning of the universe, when the universe started. And so therefore, you have what is called a clockwork universe. It works like clockwork. It's set in motion, the motion according to the laws of Newton, and it functions and carries on functioning in that very way. And so therefore, if there is a God, and we have presumed in the past that there is a God, all he has to do is to create the clockwork universe, set it in motion, and that is it. But what about the human beings? Because we think, well, the same pertains to the human being. We do things because of previous causes. We are listening to this very presentation because of something that happened immediately before. And that happened before because of something that happened before that. So therefore, we too are subject to cause and effect. We think that we are doing things of our own free will. Not at all. We have no free will, according to the clockwork universe. So therefore, we, as human beings, fall into that pattern of cause and effect. So, God creates his universe, switches it on, it's working, and he goes and enjoys himself. He goes and has a game of golf. But then there is Aristotle, the ancient Greek philosopher, who said, the universe never had a beginning. It was always there, it was always functioning. So that cause and effect is always there. Conclusion, no God. So you see why there is this secularist opinion. Oh yes, we are human beings. Because we are human beings, we behave according to human beings, and we have values, which are all in sense of cause and effect. And we try to put those values into operation. That was 350 years ago. But then we come to modern times, very modern times. And now, we learned something very interesting about the modern universe. Our universe is an expanding universe. And if the universe is an expanding universe, it began with a big bang. That was the beginning. So therefore, Aristotle falls out of the picture. But an expanding universe is a cooling universe. So inevitably, the time will come when the universe as a whole will be cooled and go down to minus 273 degrees. Minus, frozen, dead. We have that in the seasons. We have a spring. We have the summer, the autumn, the winter. The progression is not simple according to symmetry. It's asymmetrical. And therefore, we have the idea of Stephen Hawking, who presents the fact that man's consciousness is in line with the asymmetry of the universe. And what does that mean? In the same way as the universe inevitably has to burn out and be cold, finished, dead, so each and every one of us has to be in the same mode. In other words, we are born, we have the spring of life, we have the summer of life, we have the autumn of life, and then there's the winter of life, and we are dead, finished, gone. That is the position today, a very, very negative position, and something which has to be overcome. If Stephen Hawking is correct, we can have a very, very negative world. And perhaps that is the basis of the negativity in the world today. Because if we're going to die anyway, why be good? Why have values? Why strive for anything which is good? We're going to die, so we may as well take what we can have, grab what we can have, possess what we can have, enjoy it, irrespective of whether somebody else is hurt or not. Isn't that the world of today? Well, Graphic Kabbalah holds that everything is in the Torah. So therefore, all that we are discussing is in the Torah. And when we're talking about the Torah, we're talking about the Bible as a whole. Not only the 5 books of Moses, but the Bible from beginning to end, as we have it. Where is it in the Bible? Well, we find it of all people concerning the views and ideas and thoughts of King Solomon. King Solomon, who knew so much, who could talk to nature, understand nature, and get the energies of nature, know what was going on in the world. He is the one who gives us this idea. There are 3 works, 3 books in the Bible, in the name of King Solomon. And the first is the Song of Songs, is the Song of Youth. It is the song of the spring of life. Beautiful poetry, love. Ah, what a wonderful world it is. You know that the Song of Songs nearly didn't make it in the Bible because there's very little about religion in it at all. Analyze it and see. There aren't thoughts about God. And indeed, at a major convention in the year 67 of the Common Era, it was almost thrown out. And then we have the book of Proverbs. The book of Proverbs is the book of philosophy. How we think, how we ponder, how we analyze things in mid-age, in the summer of our life. And then we have the book of Ecclesiastes, Kohelet. And Kohelet is in the autumn of life. Oh, a different idea of the world. Vanity of vanities. Everything is negative. Everything is vain. Oh, what a terrible world it is. Isn't he following the ideas of the philosophy of Hawking? And because we are already in the autumn of life in Kohelet, you know, if all is in vain, there is no purpose for anything. So we see that King Solomon already has these thoughts. Now, basically, what is the general problem? And the general problem can be seen in terms of modern science. Because when it comes to modern science, when I'm talking about modern science, I'm talking about modern science at this very moment. Modern science is looking for a symmetry in which everything is in order, where everything is in place, where everything is centered. That is the world. It's a perfect world. And in such a perfect world, even if it is expanding at the moment, if there is a symmetry, then nothing will degenerate. And we can have a situation where if we study these symmetries, then we can know everything about everything in the universe. Well, what do we find? We find there are major forces. There is the electromagnetic force. There is the nuclear force, a strong nuclear force, a weak nuclear force, and then there's a gravity force. The force of gravity. Force of gravity. Back to Newton. Well, the modern scientists are able, through their modern model of the universe, to put everything into a symmetry. And that is the strong, weak nuclear forces, electromagnetic forces, which motors every heaven viewing. Every person is motored by this electromagnetic force, starting with the heart. Everything can be put into a symmetry, except for gravity. That's impossible. Gravity is the culprit. Gravity is the bad okie. And yet gravity is light. The force of gravity is very small. But we have to have gravity because if not for gravity, we'd float into the air, it would disappear. We have to be here on the ground. We need gravity. And so science at the moment is looking for supersymmetry. A supersymmetry in which gravity will fit. And once gravity fits into the supersymmetry, we have the amazing solution about everything in our universe. The moment we talk about supersymmetry, or even ordinary symmetry, we think about the Torah. There has to be symmetry in the Torah. And of course there is symmetry in the Torah. And it is reflected in the gematria. And the gematria is the geometry, and geometry has symmetry. And this is sacred geometry. So automatically, Graphic Kabbalah deals with symmetry. Now, when it comes to gravity, here again, gravity is dealt with in the Torah. Where? Well, our great teacher, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses of old, had a problem with gravity. A major problem with gravity. You all recall the story, because everybody knows the story of the worship of the golden calf in the wilderness. And at that particular time, Moshe Rabbeinu is not there. He happens to be up aloft on high. And he's coming down, and what is he carrying in his arms? He's carrying in the Decalogue in the form of tablets of stone, engraved in the handwriting of divinity himself. And he's carrying this as he comes down, and then he hears the news about what is happening in the camp of Israel. And what happens? He drops what he's holding in his hand, and it smashes. How guilty he feels, how terrible he feels. Can you imagine something with the hand of God, and you drop it and you break it? Oh, you feel terrible. And that's how he felt. What was the problem? Gravity. Because if not for gravity, they would not have fallen out of his hand. The Midrash tells us that they fell because the letters of divinity which kept the stones up, spirituality in the stones, were the anti-gravity power. But now I'm jumping ahead of what I'm going to say a little later. Let's come back to Moshe Rabbeinu and his problem. And he speaks to God about it, about this problem of gravity, and he tells God, he asks God, he says, I have a problem. Show me your glory. Kavodecha. Why glory? Because kavod, glory, comes from the word kaved, and kaved is to be heavy. Heavy because of gravity. Kaved. We have an organ in our body which is called the kaved, and the kaved is the liver, which is essential and basic to human life. It is heavy, it is important, and that is what is troubling Moshe Rabbeinu. Show me your glory. How do you overcome this gravity? How do you get that spirit which is in the letters, which keeps everything aloft? What is the basis of it all? And divinity tells him, first of all, and I'm analyzing the text because we are doing everything in very short time. Divinity tells him, first of all, you have to be absolute and completely still. You can't move. In other words, time must be excluded in order to understand it. And that, again, is basic to Graphic Kabbalah, because Graphic Kabbalah deals with diagrams which are fixed in place and time is excluded. And so, therefore, motion, the laws of motion are excluded. And gravity relates to the laws of motion. Because when gravity works, there is motion, there is a falling. And we immediately exclude gravity in our considerations. That's the very first thing. And then divinity says, be still. And he shows him how to be still. And divinity says, I will cross your path in a flash. And then you will not be able to see et panai, that which comes before me, but you will see that which comes achorai, that which comes afterwards, in the end, in the final. That is what divinity tells him. And what is divinity telling him? And here we have the basic concepts and idea of Graphic Kabbalah. which is put into practice in Daroma. What is it? Well, ideas, thoughts, cross the mind in a flash. You get an idea, you get a thought. It is as if divinity is crossing the mind. You're getting something from on high, an inspiration, a higher intuition, something from the higher self. And you get the idea. But it is not the idea that counts, it is what happens to that idea at the very end. In other words, when everything is complete, when everything is there, then you look at the picture. In other words, you have to look at the whole picture. You see things in a whole, in its totality. Because when you see things as a totality in the whole, then everything fits in place. Now remember, if you are still and motion is excluded, gravity falls out of the picture. And so therefore, you can look at everything in place, everything in position, and you see a complete and whole picture. What I am telling you can be compared with a jigsaw puzzle. You buy a jigsaw puzzle, and there is a picture on the outside, what you're going to have in the end. 1,000 pieces, and then you put them all together. And you always discover that when you have the final jigsaw puzzle in place, it is anything but what looks like on the box. Nothing of the sort. That makes it difficult. And what happens when you see the whole? Well, we are told that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And indeed, you take a little part of the jigsaw puzzle, and they all seem to have the same shape, and yet you'll find out that each one is slightly different, because each one is a whole in itself. Each particle is a whole in itself. Each particle is a universe in itself. It's a field in itself. And then you get a piece of the jigsaw puzzle. It is totally black, blackness. Do you want black in the universe? And yet, when you put it into the puzzle, the blackness has meaning, because there is a contrast. There's a contrast between opposites. And what is more, when the puzzle is complete and you look at it, it is not flat. You've started everything with flat pieces, absolutely and totally flat. You look at the puzzle, it comes to life. There is beauty, there is color, there is depth. It is all there in the final picture. That is the picture of the universe in supersymmetry. It is all there. And you see the depth. And everything is uplifting. Gravity doesn't come into the picture. And yet, without gravity, you wouldn't be able to have the picture at all, because the picture must lie flat on the surface. It lies flat on the surface. It looks flat on the surface. It is flat on the surface because of gravity. You have to have gravity. But once everything is centered, once everything is seen as a whole, as a totality, everything is different. That is the target. That is the aim. You cannot see divinity at the very beginning. You have an idea, you have a thought, I'm going to buy a jigsaw puzzle. But in the end, when you see things in totality, you see things in a very different light. Because in supersymmetry, everything which seems to be dead and dark and horrible comes to life. And you see it as life when it is totally and completely still. Again, we have said that everything is in the Torah, so therefore the Torah must have models of supersymmetry. And we quote the one which is the basis of Daroma. And what is that? The menorah. That is the candelabrum, the menorah found originally in the model of the universe, which is a sanctuary in the wilderness, and then the temple in Jerusalem, which again is another universal model. Universal models, I'm telling you, because these are the models which are going to be used eventually by Daroma, because these are models of Graphic Kabbalah. But let's go back to the menorah. The menorah is described as Menorat Zahav. It is a menorah of gold. And one of the important things of the making of this menorah, it all comes from one piece of gold. In other words, it's not pieces put together. It is a totality to start off with. It is whole from the very beginning. It is super from the very beginning. And from this lump of gold, you get that menorah. And if you have a look at the shape and the form of the menorah, you'll see that it is totally and completely symmetrical. That is its shape. What is the meaning, the symbol of the menorah? And remember, all these models have symbols. They symbolize something deep. They symbolize something about what goes on in the mind. Well, the menorah symbolizes universal light, the totality of universal light, the light of the universe, which is Chokhmah as a whole. And how do we get that? Well, usually when you have a lamp in a room, it is meant to light up the room. It is meant to light up that which is inside, but not the menorah. The menorah is designed to light up the whole world, and we find it in the windows of the temple construction. Normally in a house in ancient times, a window, there was no glass in those days, had a little slit on the outside and wide on the inside. In other words, narrow on the outside and wide on the inside, so that the light should come in and spread into the room. With a temple, it's exactly the opposite way. The slit is on the inside and it's wide on the outside. So therefore, the light inside goes out. And that is the idea of the menorah. It is to give universal light to the whole of the universe. Symbol of a single totality of light. The totality of universal knowledge. We have a model, a rough drawing of the menorah as described in the Torah. And notice that there are 3 half circles coming around and one straight in the center. Totally and completely symmetrical. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 lights constituting the whole. Right. Now, there is no question about it. There is symmetry. And now, if the light all comes together, then the light comes up, the light goes in and in and in, like that, to form the single light at the top, right in the center, which is the universal light. So notice that these circles are completed. They go round, and you get the central light in the center. So therefore, basically, in the end, I have the central light here with 1, 2, 3 circles. That is what it amounts to. And this is the universal light coming out of the center. That is what the model shows. Now, we have a look at the gematria of Menorat Zahav. We add it all up and it comes to 704. Now notice, 704. 7, the 7 branches. The 4 units, 1, 2, 3, in the upright. 4. It's all there. But now you've got 4, 7, and then, or rather we do it the other way around because numbers go this way. You've got the 4, you've got the 7, and then you've got the 11. 4, 7, 11, because 7 and 4 is 11. And 4, 7, 11, that is a form of the psi, PSI, which happens to be the basis of the round, the spiral, going round and round and round, like the 3, 5, 8. That is the golden section, that is called. Here we have it. And this goes on and on and on in the spiraling. So we have a spiraling movement which comes out of the menorah in the whole of the universe. Now, where is this menorah? This menorah is on the south side. And so therefore, we are told, Mi sheyachkin yad rin. He who wishes to be wise should turn to the south. Where's he facing originally? He's facing the entrance of the sanctuary. The entrance of the sanctuary is to the east. And so we face east, of course, to the rising sun, solar, rising sun, which determines the day, daylight, the break of day, the beginning of life. But then you face east, but you turn south. You turn to the menorah. Shimshon Raphael Hirsch shows us the relationships of the menorah to the Kabbalah. And he tells us that this outside, this one on the right, this there is Chokhmah. Chokhmah. And Chokhmah is divine wisdom, undifferentiated wisdom. And on this side is Bina, and Bina is understanding, and Chokhmah Bina. And in the center, you have Ruach. And Ruach is spirit. And it is the spirit of light, and the Ruach, which goes up and which is centered. So in actual fact, you have the Dea, the Bina, and the Ruach, which gives us understanding, Haskel, Haskalah, the Kabbalah. It's all here in the menorah. Very simple model. And yet, so easy to understand. And so deep. And that is the most important thing. Now, we are facing east, we're turning to the south. What do we see in the south? Well, the menorah, you'll notice, is uplifting. All the lights are uplifted. There is no gravity here. Gravity keeps the menorah flat on the earth. And that is the D in Daroma. D. D, which is 4. And 4 is a flat earth, which is square, which you can measure. That is right here at the bottom. That is your base, the D. And then it goes Roma to the height. And the Roma to the height is the Mem, which is the totality of knowledge, wisdom, divine wisdom, which doesn't change, which is sacred because it doesn't change, going up to the height. And here it is. And the flame, the light that goes up to the height is anti-gravity. In other words, our spirituality, that which is spiritual within us, overcomes the power and the force of gravity. The more spiritual we are, the more spiritual we are in our minds, the more we can overcome that force which keeps us bound to earth. And in the totality, in the superconscious, you break free of that gravity. Gravity doesn't count at all. You have freedom of will, and you soar up to eternity. And isn't that what we want? We have defeated in the image of the menorah, which is the image. It starts off Daroma. We beat the philosophy, the psychology, the attitude of Stephen Hawking. Let us now apply all we have learned and put it into reality. That is the real self. The real self, which is uplifted up there in the heaven at night, in the patterns of the stars in the night time. And we turn to the south. And what do we find in the south? We have the constellation which is called Crux, C-R-U-X. And Crux is a cross. It is a Southern Cross. And now, what is the Southern Cross? The Southern Cross goes around the South Pole. And so you have the pole in the center. And in the course of 1 year, you have a constellation which looks like a cross like that. And you have the 4 seasons. And so therefore, in the 4 seasons, we have this symbolism. This is actually what we see in the sky. There is a 5th star, by the way, in the Southern Cross. And now, there is a light, a big light in the Southern Cross. It is a light of the 1st magnitude, Alpha Centaurus, which is the 2nd biggest light in the universe, 1st degree light. And by the way, there are 6 degrees of light, which the mind can see. Right, so you have this particular pattern, all on the center. But there is nothing in the center as such. Now what, in the course of the year, a cycle around is described. You have the round, and you have this and this. And if you were to extend this, you would have a cross in a circle. That is what you would have. It's very simple. But now, and here's the interesting point, we are standing in Jerusalem, and Jerusalem is the spiritual center of the world, and we look now to the Southern Cross, and what do we see? Do we see all this? No, we don't, because we're too far north. In actual fact, there's a moment when this Southern Cross dips, disappears, and it comes up again. So we only see it in part of the year. There is something missing. There's something of the totality which is missing in this circle, in this cycle. You can only see it when you go south, Daroma. When you go, the more you go to the south from Jerusalem, the more this becomes evident. However, when you are in Jerusalem and you cannot go south, you can work out the pattern of this from the signs of the zodiac. Because the signs of the zodiac relate directly, the 12 signs relate directly to this particular thing. We look at the signs of the zodiac, we compare it, and we have a totality. In other words, from the 12 signs of the zodiac, we can work out exactly how this works. We can work out when it rises out of the horizon and when it sets. But now, let us go on a physical journey southward. Mi she yadrin yachkin. That is what we are told. You go to the south, you become conscious. In other words, you have chokhmah, you have divine consciousness, awareness, wisdom, which is in its totality and is sacred and doesn't change. That is what you have, the more you go south. So you come more and more closer to the equator, and then this all appears. That is what you have. Now, what do you have when this all appears and this pattern appears? Well, have a look at it. This is a description in the story of Adam and Eve. That is what we have in the sky. What are we told when Adam and Eve are driven out of the Garden of Eden? They can't come back. What are we told? We are told that the Garden of Eden is shut to them, they cannot get to them, and it is protected by the sword, which is the lahat, the flame of the sword, which mithapechet. It turns itself upside down, around and around. And that guards the entrance to Eden. That is what it is. This is it. The entry to Eden, to the Garden of Eden, to paradise, lies in the south, in the formation of the pattern of the Southern Cross. Because here it is, we talk about the cross, but this is a sword. There's no doubt about it. That is the cherev. And this cherev, mitapechet, it turns itself over. And it is the lahat, it is the flame, it is the light which we see in the sky. And here we have an empty circle. And now we turn to the Kabbalah, and the Kabbalah tells us, and we find this in Isaac Luria. How does the universe start? With empty space, the empty circle. And that is what Tov and Bohu is, that we have it, the empty circle, which has to be filled. And that is what we have to do. We have to fill it. We have to go by that and that. We have to cross in order to find the universal center, which is the center of everything. Because here in the center is the tree of life. And now we have the most fascinating thing of all. In order to cross, we have to go in a straight line. Holistic thinking requires an aspect of universal thought, which is known as linear thinking. The ancients didn't think in linear thinking. They thought in terms of rounds. The round of the day-night cycle, the round of the Monday cycle, the round of the yearly cycle. They thought in terms of round. That happens to be matriarchal society. Then we have patriarchal society, starting with Abram, Isaac, and Jacob. And here we have, with patriarchal society, a change of thinking. Linear thinking. Thinking in straight lines. The moment you have thinking in straight lines, you have a time process. You have a beginning and an end. Straight. To think straight. That is the problem with the world today. We don't think straight. If we thought straight in linear thinking, then everything would fit into place. And that is the object of Graphic Kabbalah. To think straight, to think holistically. You put the two together, you can understand everything in its totality in our whole universe. That is where we begin. So, let us do it to show you how we start. Right? You've got this circle and the cross. And that is the symbol of the Garden of Eden. Right, now, you have this particular point there. Right, now, your basis is the 4, 7, 11. So you've got the 4, 7, 11. You add it up, 4, 7, 11, 11. And then you've got, after that, 18. Right, now, you've got 4, 7 is 11, 11 is 22, 32 and 8 is 40. And 40 is Chokhmah, which is the totality. Right? But now, you have, in the alphabet, you have the 22 letters of the alphabet. And then you have the 10 vowels, which is 32, which is Lev, which is the heart. And that is the totality. You start off with 32 on the outside. The 32 is the perimeter. You have this item as 10. So you have 10 and 10. 10 as the totality. So you have 32 over 10, and that is 3,2, which is pi. It's one of the forms of pi. Right, and now you have, so this distance from there to there is 5. That distance there is 7. 7, 7, 7. 7, 7, 7, 7. 4 sevens are 28, which is the letter Tav, and it's a syllable. 22 and 6 is 28. And that is the totality of the square all around in light. And we have 7 times 7 for the area, which is 49. And 49 are the 50 gates of understanding, which are in the world, and Moses was vouched only 49, of course, 7, 7, 49, because he squared everything up, and that is how he got the 49. And there you have the substance, of the earth, which is a square in the circle. Everything squares up, and that is how you start. And the 7 is the Zohar of the Rakia, because 7 is 7, and 5 is hay, and the R is the round, which becomes straight, because the R in the human alphabet, in other words, the alphabet which is used in the Torah, which is used in the Bible, which is the Hebrew alphabet, that R is the evolution from round thinking to straight thinking, and that is the human head evolving. You've got the Zohar, the splendor of the universe, the Zohar Arakia, and that is how you develop the whole of geometric Kabbalah. It is as simple as this. Now, consider it, think about it, weigh it up, ponder it. Is it worthwhile carrying on or not? It is entirely and completely up to you.